Kasi ma-install ba naman yung sequence ng ang voting. Baka may planted voter yan. Halimbawa, kilala yung presinto for having voters of a certain candidate. The other candidate could send someone to keep on questioning the Board of Election Inspectors so that they could not na humahaba na ang pila. Tapos nag-uuwian na yung iba. Nag-uuwian na yung iba na botante nung iba. Ayan. Na panalo na siya sa style niya. No? So, kung reasonable naman yung protest, doon ka lang dapat mag-protest at humingi ng kopya ng protest form sa board, election board. Next slide. Next slide. This is when scanning, when repeated scanning of the ballot fails. The chairman marks the ballot as rejected, and there's a receptacle for rejected. The ballot would be put in an envelope for such rejected ballot. Next slide. Note, the last line said that no replacement ballot will be given to the voter. Pag rejected ang ballot, no replacement. Although merong sinasabi rin dito na pag hindi naman kasalanan ng botante, dapat bigyan siya ng extra ballot. Magiging problema yan kasi later on baka magkulang. So ang ginagawa ng Board of Election Inspectors, sa huli na nila bibigyan pag may extra ballots pa. Kung wala na talagang extra ballots, pasalamat ka na lang. Susulat na lang sa notes nila na may isang di nakaboto dahil wala na kami. Na hindi niya kasalanan dahil naubusan na kami ng ballots. Next slide. Okay. This is the post-voting procedure, which is also very important. No? Once the voting ends, the Board of Election Inspectors closes the voting. A member of the Board of Election Inspectors inserts the same security key on the same slot in the middle of on the left side in the middle of the PCOS machine that we saw earlier. No? And once that happens, the screen shows us the picture of closing voting. No? The Board of Election Inspectors then pins the closed voting part of the shown in the screen. And after doing that, two members of the Board of Election Inspectors have to input again their PIN number. So ang sequence niyan, sarado ang voting, magpipin muna sila. No? Kailangan magpin muna sila. And once na ipasok nila ang PIN, counting begins. Next slide. Close voting, then counting begins. Pag na-insert na nila ang PIN number. Pag natapos na ang count, mag-print na ng election returns. Okay. Now, it's important to, again, another area of cheating. It's important to observe, this is one of the areas where you have to observe, very closely. Because this is where huge-scale vote changing occurs. When after the counting of votes, the election return should be printed, and after printing, it should be transmitted. Now, after the first set of printing, doon lang ipapasok yung transmission code. As we said earlier, that slot is always closed until the end of the voting. Until the first set of printing. why is this sequence important? The sequence is important because, halimbawa, tayo, PFP, nakuha na natin yung copy na print ng first set of printing. Meron na tayong ebidensya, hard copy, ng boto ng presinto yon. No? Kung meron na tayo at nag-transmit sila ng iba, may ebidensya na during the transmission may milagrong nangyari. Oo, dahil sa pre-programming. So, the transmission cord can only be attached after the first set of printed election returns have been distributed to the various entities entitled to the election returns. Before that, that slot must be closed and not attached to the modem. No? It's been the experience, and this has been seen in some election cases, that some BEIs who were intent on helping a candidate cheat pretended not to be able to transmit the election returns. Kunwari nahihirapan, gano'n ko. Now, the election returns, the normal transmission of the election returns are transmitted to 3 entities. One, to the central server. No? Number 2, to the election watchdogs. Like, sino bang election watchdog this year?
PCRB.
PPCRB, hindi NAFREN. Ang NAFREN, hindi... yan, kasama, pati KBP, kasama yan. And to the municipality or the local canvassing area for the local candidates. No? Some boards of election inspectors were found to pretend not to be able to transmit. Why? The reason for that is because kung hindi nakapag-transmit, pwede na nilang gamitin ang SD card na mag-transmit. Kung corrupted yung SD card na ibibigay nila si Kwan, iba na yung botong lalabas para sa presinto yun. So napaka-importante ang sequence na ito na dapat i-follow. Because without following that, there might be shenanigans that might have occurred. The other thing is they're allowed to try to transmit 3 times. They should try 3 times. Now, if they could not transmit because they would during the last elections, the claim was mahina yung telco sa aming area. No? Pero the telcos, if you were reading newspapers and observing at social media, ang sabi ng telcos, wala kaming problema sa mga area yan. Malakas ang aming signals doon. So that should not be an excuse. And they were able to prove that their signals at that time were optimum. No? So if they insist on not being able to transmit, there's another solution. All precincts nowadays are equipped with satellite transmitting devices. So kung hindi ka makapag-transmit, yung maliit lang yan, bigan.
Meron pa rin.
Ngayon, makakapag-transmit ka lang pag makakapag-declare ka ng unable to transmit lang pag nagawa mo na lahat ng steps na ito. Doon na magkakaroon ng dagdag na trabaho yung watcher natin. Dahil sasamahan niya ang member ng election board, madala-dala ang SD card hanggang dun sa, pwedeng mag-switch along the way. Pwedeng makidnap yung SD card at palitan ng results.
Sa experience po namin sa Tindahan Interland o Magallanes, in Barangay Malbu, kahit may bigan.
May bigan?
Hindi siya talaga makaano kasi paliputan siya ng mga bundok eh. So hindi talaga siya makapagbato. So ang nangyari, the machine and the SD card was sent to the municipality. Doon na mismo sila nag-send. Pero yung pa rin. But I think there are also other places na talagang ganun.
Knowledge yan ng Comelec.
Pero, yun ang delikado nga doon, yung pagta-travel from the polling place papunta doon sa
Yan ang equivalent nung manual elections ng snatching of the ballot box. Kasi ang snatch naman ngayon, mas madaling snatch yung SD card, maliit lang yan, at palitan. At sasabihin, ito yung SD card na galing sa... Kasi napakahirap, during the election protest, it's not electronic anymore. In the election protest, what is actually being counted are the actual paper ballots. Yes. They won't look at all, because there are many problems attached to, you're not even sure if those SD cards are the same. Some SD cards will not open anymore kasi sira. They bought cheap SD cards which did not last very long. So they had to rely only on the counting of paper ballots. So you can see how the electronic forms of cheating are quite easier if they manage to do it. And that is why the watcher is at the center this time, of trying to prevent all of these types of cheating, particularly the substitution of SD cards, the wrong transmission because something was transmitted, or rogue transmissions. In other words, sinabi hindi kami nakapag-transmit, nangyari ito sa isang area sa Visayas, in a case that was decided by the Supreme Court. The audit log had shown that the transmission was not successful and that the machine had stopped at a certain hour. But when they looked at the results, may results naman na na-transmit outside the time of the audit log. Pero hindi naman ginamit yung machine na yon. Ang ginamit na machine was a rogue machine located somewhere outside the precinct that was able to transmit cheated election results. So, all of this is technology dependent.
So ang safeguard natin doon, yung printed na.
Oh, yung printed.
At
Kaya
saka,
nga,
mas mabilis yung dito sa cellphone, kung makakuha ka ng sigas, mabilis yung may tatapon. At saka yung printed na hard copy, mas...
yan. Kasi ang sinasabi, para hindi mawala yan, ang gawin ng watcher ninyo, kunan na niya yung picture ng kakukuha niyang copy ng election meter at ibato na niya sa coordinator niya agad o kung sino dapat ang magkaroon ng kopya sa PFP. Safeguard yun. Kasi meron ka ng kopya. But make sure na yung hard copy nun, dala-dala pa rin niya. Para, alam mo naman dito sa Pilipinas, ang mga korte dito, they always want to prove by hard copies. No? So, that's the reason why Attorney George Briones emphasized a lot that bago nyo bigyan bago nyo ibigay yung final allowance ng watcher ninyo, dapat nasa inyo yung election returns, yung hard copy. Ngayon, hindi lang pera yan, napaka-importante ng election returns. Baka binili ng iba yung kopya niya ng election returns para mapagtakpan yung isa ring possibility yon. Next slide. Okay. Now, before the actual counting of votes, the BEI shall record in the minutes of voting the quantity of the unused ballots. The chairman shall prepare all the unused ballots. What if there are unused ballots left there? The chairman will, like the old procedure, the chairman will tear it in half, no? And the portion with serial numbers shall be placed in an envelope to be submitted to the election officer, and the other portion shall be placed in another envelope and deposited inside the compartment of the ballot for valid votes. This is all in the checklist, so you don't have to worry about it. Check nyo, nilagay ba ng chairman sa envelope yung other half? Yung isang half pa pumasok sa ballot box. Check nyo sa checklist natin yon. Next slide. Okay, we already described the counting of votes earlier. Next slide. Okay. Eto note this sequence After they enter their PIN, di ba, close voting, enter in the PIN. Printing of the election returns, no? Printing of the election returns. Yan yung sequence, no? Bibigyan ng yung first 8 copies, i-distribute yan sa entitled entities. Isa na yung PFP. No? Pilitin ng watcher ninyo kasi unang-una hindi naman siya magbabayad kung wala siyang election return. Ano mangyayari kung hindi pumayag ng ang chairman? Anong mangyayari kung hindi pumayag ang BEI? Nabigyan siya ng kopya ng election returns. Election offense yun. Ano? So file a proper protest in the minutes. Take a picture, and that should be evidence that you should submit to the person who is distributing the allowances of the kwan. That na hindi siya doon sa instance na yon lamang ang instance ang pwede niyo siyang bigyan kasi ginawa na naman yan lahat ng paraan. Yes.
Based on the omnibus election code, dapat pirmahan niya.
Pipirmahan yan sa likod. Sa likod.
Saka may ano pa ngayon eh.
May
Tambang pa ngayon.
tama. By the way, before transmitting,
pag kinuha mo yung ano, yung third copy, yung election return. Ngayon, para ma-authenticate yun, kailangan yung BEI magpipirma dun sa likod.
yes. So, ang kopya mo may pirma.
May pirma talaga sila doon sa kanilang pangarap.
Isa pa. Sa transmission. Tapos na yung distribution. Bago sila mag-transmit, this is the first time this is being used in the election because in all past elections involving automated elections, this was not done because this also entails some cost. So this year, before you transmit, the members of the BEI have to put in their digital signatures. Hindi ba din sa digital signatures? Pag na-input yung digital signatures, saka lang magta-transmit yan. Safeguard yan. To make sure, we can think of other possibilities kung paano they can go around that. Pero essentially, that was requested after the last election as a further safeguard. Pumayag naman at gagawin kasama na yan sa election this time. So after the printing of the election returns and before transmitting, put in the digital signatures. Yeah. Next. Okay. After if the transmission has been successful, they can print another 22 copies. Because those who were not entitled to the copies of the election return could request it. Pero may bayad. Alam ko kung paano magpapabayad ang Board of Election Inspectors kasi wala namang specifics na nilagay sa procedure nila. Siguro naman na-instruct sila beforehand. Ngayon, kung gusto mo pa ng isa pang kopya ng bayad ka. Hanggang 22 copies na ito. So, unahan. Kung meron ka ng kopya dahil official representative ka ng PFP, baka tanggihan ka nila. Tanggihan ka na nila. Kasi unahan mo na sa iba. No? But, remember, there are you have the right to demand a copy of the first set. No? For free. No? For free. Next slide. Next slide. Ito yung slot. This is the slot for the thumb marks and the signatures. No? It's just one signature. And your copy should be properly thumb marked and signed also by the members of the Board of Election Inspectors, being an authentic copy. Next slide. Okay, after the counting of votes, the BEI shall deliver the ballot box to the city and municipal treasurer. The BEI shall deliver to the election officer the separate envelopes containing the election returns intended for the city municipal board of canvassers, COMELEC, in the provincial board of canvassers. And the PCOS shuts down all of its procedures. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. We've discussed this already. We're going next to the next set of slides. Let's have a 5-minute break. I think we'll just, yes, we'll just go ahead. You can have your coffee while we're discussing this, because I've been told that it's almost 4 o'clock. We'll just elaborate on transmission and canvassing, because this is another major source of cheating. Now, the only safeguard that we have in this case, in the case of transmission and canvassing, is to make sure that the transmission cord, to make sure that there's no premature transmission. And that means that the transmission cord is attached only after the election returns, the first set of election returns, have been distributed, properly signed and thumb marked to their respective recipients. Next slide. So let's just go through this. As before, this is easier now because what was being done manually is done electronically. If you remember the election returns of the old manual voters, puro taras ang nakalagay doon. At the end, may diagonal. Every 5, no? Every 5. Tapos, at the end, nandun yung total. Kaya kung 130 yung total, lagyan mo lang, 1,300 yung total, lagyan mo lang ng isang zero pa, magiging 130,000 na yan. Ang laki ng jump, no? So, hindi na mangyayari yan ngayon. Ang counting naman, isang parang ng dayaan dyan, yung nagbabasa, iba yung binabasa. Iba yung kakumplin na yung nakaupo sa likod para hindi malata ng iba. At puyatan, no? Hindi na ganun ka-bilis ngayon. Puyatan. So, the last part involves the consolidation and tabulation of electronically transmitted election return or certificates of canvass, and printing of and posting of the certificates of canvass, and transmitting the results. No? Now, for local candidates and for the local election, after the printing and posting of the certificates of canvass at na-transmit ng results, pwede nang i-proclaim ang winning candidates. Now, the goal before of every lawyer was to make sure if his candidate won, would be immediately proclaimed. Because kung dinelay pa yung proclamation at that point, election protest na yon. Hanggang tulad ng isang kaso ng kaibigan ko, tapos na may election na sa May 9, yung kaso niya ng mayor, hindi pa tapos. Kasi nasa municipal, nasa trial court, wala sa COMELEC. Mas mabilis ang procedure sa COMELEC. Next slide. That's the timeline of what we just discussed. The casting of votes, counting, and up to proclamation. Make sure that the candidate is proclaimed for Bongbong Marcos once all the results are in, and it's obvious. If if the surveys are correct, kung tama ang mga surveys, ang mangyayari dyan is at a certain point in time, hindi pa kompleto. Kung napakalayo na at mathematically impossible na makahabol sila, dapat ipilit na ma-proclaim. They cannot insist na tapusin natin ang counting. Kasi kung tama ang lead niya, halimbawa 60%, less than 30% sa Lenny, paano pa siya hahabol? Oh. And I predict this year, dahil maraming tao na nahiya magsabing bongbong sila, ang mangyayari this year, tulad ng nangyari sa overseas voting, umabot ng 85% ang Bongbong Marcos, which was not predicted. Because many people pretended to say they were not voting for him. But in fact, they voted for him. I know a lot of friends who will not say that they'll vote for Bongbong. But they will say, alam naman nilang Bongbong na Bongbong ako. They were telling me they're voting for Bongbong. Oh, kung totoo yan, and this is going to be a phenomenon. Ang worry ko lang dito, baka sabihin na, sinabi ng mga survey, 60% siya, bakit lumalabas na 80% siya ngayon? Baka sabihin na, nandaya kayo. Yun lang. Pero yan ang explanation lang. Daming tao na ayaw umamin na para kay Bongbong sila. Sa Bicol. Wala na dito. Oh. Next slide. Okay. Now, the most important, of course, the canvassing of the election returns for the president would be the Congress. The Congress. And I think in terms of the composition of the houses of Congress, hindi dapat magkakaroon ng problema si Bongbong kung tama ang pag-transmit ng kwan. Alam kong gagawa ng kagulan ng mga yan, lahat ng pwede nilang magawa parang bilang ma-proclaim si Bongbong Marcos ay gagawin nila. Pero, well, the lawyers of the party are anticipating this and are ready with their response, led by Attorney George. Next slide. So as I said, the transmission cable is connected to the machine and to the modem. After the printing of election returns, electronic transmission of election returns, and after that, you disconnect the transmission cable. Disconnect agad yan. And put back in the box where that you return to the municipality. Ang sabi nga ng COMELEC, after the elections, virtually you're not going back to all of those machines. If there's a protest, you'll rely on the paper ballots inside the ballot, hard copy inside the ballot boxes. Next slide. Okay, again, tell your watchers that because this is a very important process and they might be pretending to transmit. Tell your watchers that they have more than 3 ties. 3 ties to connect the modem to the central server, 3 times to connect the modem to the and then 3 times to connect to the municipality or local server. No? So that would be 9 times. No? Mahalata ninyo, kung magaling ang watcher ninyo at properly oriented, mahalata niya kung naglolokohan na sila. Anyway, tapos na ang voting. Nakapag-vote na. Pwede siyang mangulit dito kasi napaka-importante ng step na ito. pwedeng dito sila makapag-transmit ng daang libong boto. So it's very important to be alert about these transmission attempts. Next slide. This is the areas where they transmit results, which we've discussed earlier. Next slide. Next slide. Okay, this is the same. Next slide. Okay. Next slide. That's the end of this part. Yes.
Sir, every procedure po kina-call out ng BI.
Every procedure call out ng BI.
Halimbawa, mag-aano na tayo, December na, tatawagin yung watchers, laging ganun.
Hindi ganun. Hindi. Basta gagawin lang nila. Tapos na ang voting, ganun. Kaya dapat marunong mag-observe yung inyong watcher.
Anong face na?
At sila magtanong, saan na po tayo? Magsasara na ba tayo ng boto? Oo. Saan na po tayo? Ano ho yan? Magta-transmit. Ba't kayo nagta-transmit? Ngayon, hindi pa kayo nakapagbigay ng election return. Importante yung tanong yan. Ha? Oo. But once tinanong mo sila ng ganyan, ma-alerto sila na alam mo yung procedure. Oo. Hindi ho nyo, tapos pag talagang magpilit sila, hindi ho kayo pwedeng mag-transmit ng election return hanggat hindi nyo kami nabibigyan ng kopya ng election returns. No? So dapat at this point dapat ma-agresibo at makulit yung watcher nito kasi dito pandayan ng malaki. Next slide. Okay. Now before closing the voting, they have to enter their PIN, no? And before transmitting, they have to enter the digital signature. Iba yung PIN sa digital signature. Yung PIN gagamitin before opening and closing the voting. Yung digital signature ginagawa before transmitting. Next slide. Ito ang lalabas na prompt sa screen. Okay. Call is being closed. Please wait. Nakapaglagay na ng print ng election returns. Please wait. Lalabas ka. Yan. Pagkatapos ng prepare yun, lalabas ka agad yung election returns. Kung hindi kayo nabigyan ng kopya ng election return o yung watcher ninyo, sabihin nyo sa kanila, wala pa akong election return. Wag muna kayo mag-transmit. Ngayon, kung mapilit sila, meron naman kayong supervising lawyer siguro sa area ninyo. Meron naman mga tao. Kung meron kayong tawagan nyo kaagad para tumakbo at pumunta doon. No? That's what your watcher should do. Next slide. Okay, we already discussed this. Next slide. Okay. Everyone knows what the digital signature is. And this is a new innovation because it's only in 2022 that they're required to put in their digital signature before transmitting the election returns. Next slide. Okay, this is the end. Now, you can obtain a copy of the checklist, which I'll leave a copy here for your watchers. No? Give each of your watchers a copy of the checklist. Make sure you give them only a copy once they've gotten their certificates and once they've gotten their first allowance. Kasi contractually obligated na sila eh. Para hindi nila ipasa sa iba. Baka gamitin naman ng iba para sa... Kasi non-partisan itong buwan na ito. It's very objective about the procedure. It's a long checklist, but it's in proper chronological sequence. So when you enter the precinct on election day, and then you check if the box is open. Check mo lang yun. Check, puro check mo na yan. Kung may unusual, imbes na mag-notebook ka, pwede mong kaya sa tabi mo, eto, ganito ang ginawa, hindi ganito. So may notes ka na doon. No? That's the way to use the checklist that has been provided for the purpose of the watchers. So make sure that they have this copy, because there's also a checklist for the pre-testing day. Any other questions?
Sir, clarification lang.
Uh,
Sa balot ba? Sa balot, ito ba yung itlog? Ito si Marcos, may itlog naman dito. Ito si Lenny.
yan ang clarification. Yan ang mga
Paano ba?
clarification. No?
Ako.
Ang itlog ni Marcos sa kabila, sa
Saan?
kaliwa, sa kaliwa.
Ito yung bilog, ito yung pangalan niya.
Ito ang pangalan ni Marcos. Parang number 7 siya, di ba?
Ako.
May bilog.
Okay.
Yung bilog na yun.
O, bilog. Then Marcos.
Huwag kayong maniwala sa Marcos. Marcos, number, bilog.
Ako.
Huwag kayong maniwala pag sabihin niyo sa watchers, sabihin sa mga
Wala ba
butante.
sample dyan, sir?
Paano na sample?
Wala raw natin yan.
Maglalagay ako ng sample sa checklist
Ako.
para
Nakita ko na kasi yung sample. Saka sa abroad mo rin ba?
Sir, ano pong gagawin ng pool watchers kapag may pumasok na 2 or more ng butang voters na merong mga Lenny t-shirt?
bawal na bawal yun. Well, election offense yun. Pwede silang pa-arrest na ng BEI.
Okay.
That's electioneering. That's election campaign stop 2 days before that. Oo. So anybody wearing a marked t-shirt on election day, inside, especially inside the precinct, that's automatically illegal. And
kahit na doon sa radios,
maski na sa within the ranges of the precinct, pwede mo na i-justify na yung
Emblem o logo,
emblem, logo, name, any nature. May emblem silang bago.
Sir, isa pa.
Picture ni Lenny na mukha siyang santa.
pero kung pink lang sir, pero kung color pink lang, wala naman.
Kung hindi, color, pwede kayong mag-t-shirt na red, wala lang nakalagay na BBM. Red na shirt,
Sir,
red na pantalon. Edi,
Sila ganun din, pink, pwede.
oo. Pwede yun. Pwede yung colors pero walang marka. Ah.
sir,
Kung may app tayo, pwede mag-search.
yung pool watchers ng PFP ay naka-red lahat.
O naka-red, pero walang marka.
Ako, kaya sino po ang magpo-provide ng t-shirt?
T-shirt.
Provide ba ang PFP?
Ang local chairman yata eh. Ewan ko kung anong... Kasi iba't ibang disenyo yung iba't ibang lugar.
Kasi ba natin tanungin kay Awereness?
tatlo, 100% ko.
Ha?
300%.
3 t-shirts. Two watchers per precinct.
Hindi, kahit yung ano, paano yung
Siguro,
subordinate
huwag na lang mag-polo na para walang kantsawan.
To be safe, oo. To be safe,
Hindi.
Para
Dapat,
magkantsawan yan.
dapat sir nakapula kasi para ma-intimidate yung kalaban.
Hindi, magkakantsawan yan.
Problema na po, walang emblem, walang logo. Ang purpose po noon is to intimidate natin yung kalaban.
Kasi wala man silang watcher. Kailangan meron.
Ibutan, hindi naman magiging kalaban nila. Halimbawa, ibutan yung mga nakamping. Hindi magkakantsawan kayo niyan. Hindi maiwasan kasi
magsusumbong yan at magtatanong sa PEI kung tama ba yun. Yun.
Saka magkakantsawan kayo niyan.
Ano ba yung talagang
Basta walang logo, walang marka, walang sign ng partido, Naka-red ka, naka-pink ka, naka-green, pareho.
Ang tanong dyan, sino?
Gagawin natin pareho sa kahit na.
Pwede mo yung tanong ngayon.
Just for watchers and
Para-
natin dito.
Oo, yun.
Sino raw mag-provide ng mga
Guys.
t-shirts nila? Well, ideally, you should wear your normal clothes. Kung meron kayong pink, ay pink.
Still na lang. Pink
Ah.
lang lahat tayo.
Yung mga iba nagpagawa, yung mga ibang areas nagpagawa ng Seneco, kaya
No, for watchers yung pinatawag.
any more questions?
Sir, ano ba yung answer doon sa question ko? Yung sa red, yung
Ah.
uniform.
Ano raw ang policy dito para sa suot nito?
Ano yung sa loob? Ano yung t-shirt? Uniform? Whatever, no. Basta naka-red lang. Walang tatak. Wala lahat. Walang bra.
Walang bra.
Brales. Brales. Tama? Kasi pagkalit sa iba't ibang barangay yan, malalayong barangay, pinanggalingan niya, hindi na kayo magkikita. Magkikita na lang ulit yung municipal coordinator pag sinasubmit na yung election return. At doon babayaran yung remaining, kung example ko lamang naman, kung 2,000, doon ibibigay yung remaining balance. Pag na-submit ang election return. Okay, isa pa. Sa oras ng seminar, lahat ng watchers, kung pwede, obligahin ninyo na kumbinsihin nila ang kanilang pamilya